On September 1st, 1939 at 5 a.m., the German army crosses the Polish border and the world begins to burn. 2 days later, Britain and France declare war. World War II has officially begun. The Nazis called it Blitzkrieg, Lightning War. Under this relentless storm, Poland held on for only 36 days. By October 6th, the organized resistance was crushed. But the spirit of Poland refused to die. Underground rebels fought back. Intellectuals spread defiance. Soon the prisons were overflowing with those who dared to resist. And so, in April 1940, under the instructions of Heinrich Himmler, a concentration camp was established near Krakow, in the south of Poland, Auschwitz. At first, this camp was used to suppress political opponents, forcing them into brutal labor to build tanks and ammunition for the war. But later, it became the center of mass killings, giant gas chambers, and cruel experiments on human beings. In this film, we examine the man behind these atrocities, an SS captain, a scientist of shadows, and the most feared name in the history of medicine, Dr. Joseph Mengele. Look closely at this photograph from Hitler's Germany in the 1940s. A smiling doctor, looking so innocent, so professional. But when you learn the truth of his life, you will be truly shocked. Josef Mengele was born on March 16, 1911, in the town of Günzburg, Bavaria. His family was among the wealthiest and most respected in the land. His father, Karl, was a titan of industry, the owner of a massive factory producing agricultural machinery. The family name was a symbol of success. His mother, Walburga, was a woman of iron discipline, hard, religious, and unyielding. The Mengele family was not just wealthy. They were close to the Nazi Party. Karl Mengele even allowed Hitler to use his factory as a base for his election campaigns. Young Joseph was a brilliant student, obsessed with biology and medicine. But he was also a child of his time. Like many Germans, he carried the deep, bitter wound of the Great War's defeat. Revenge was breathing in the air. While still in high school, he joined the youth wing of the Stahlhelm, the Steel Helmet Organization. It was his first political step on the dark path toward Nazi ideology. But how did this brilliant student become the architect of death? Let's look deeper. In 1930, his education began at the University of Munich. This was the beating heart of Nazi ideology. He studied both medicine and anthropology. Here he sat in the lecture halls of radical professors, listening to a terrifying new concept: life unworthy of life. In German, they called it Lebensunwertes Leben. By the age of 24, he completed his first doctorate. His thesis? The racial differences in the structure of the human jaw. He wasn't just studying medicine. He was trying to prove racial purity through physical measurements. The scientist was becoming a hunter. Then, in 1937, everything changed. He joined the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene at the University of Frankfurt. This was the most prestigious scientific center in Nazi Germany. And there he met his mentor, the man who would shape his destiny, Professor Ottmar von Verschuer. Verschuer was a superstar of genetics and a high-ranking architect of Nazi racial policy. He saw the ambition, the cold discipline in young Mengele's eyes. Under Verschuer, science was no longer about healing. It was about purification. Little did the world know that this partnership was the beginning of a nightmare. In 1935, Professor Verschuer established the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene. Their specialized weapon of science was the twin method, known as Zwillingsforschung. Verschuer believed that identical twins were the key to proving the absolute power of genetics over the human soul. This is where Mengele learned his deadly obsession. The Institute hunted for anything that defiled the purity of the German race. Dwarfism, blindness, physical deformities, and mental illness. These were not seen as human suffering, but as genetic stains that had to be erased. This was the true purpose of their work. On July 14, 1933, with the blessing of Adolf Hitler, the law for the prevention of hereditarily diseased offspring was born. The mentally ill, the blind, the deaf, and even the alcoholics. They were all branded as life unworthy of life. Under this law, nearly 400,000 human beings were forcibly sterilized. The laboratory was ready. The theory was complete. All that was missing was a place to practice this darkness without limits. The decisions for sterilization were made in the hereditary health courts. Verschuer's Institute acted as the expert witness, deciding the biological destiny of thousands of human beings. This was known as racial hygiene, or Rassenhygiene. His mentor taught Mengele that the health of the individual was nothing, and the health of the race was everything. At his desk in Frankfurt, Mengele's job was to study sterilization files, analyze racial backgrounds, and classify blood types. They were searching for a biological hierarchy, trying to prove who was superior and who was inferior. In 1938, under the guidance of his mentor, Mengele completed his second doctorate in the field of medicine. His thesis was a study of cleft lips, jaws, and palates. He analyzed hundreds of family trees, tracking physical defects, genetic anomalies, and family histories. This work was done under the direct watch of Professor Ottmar von Verschuer. It was here that Mengele learned to see a human being, not as a person, but as a piece of genetic data. The transition was complete. The doctor had become a judge. Mengele graduated with the high honor of cum laude. This success opened the doors of the Nazi bureaucracy for him. In 1938, under his mentor's guidance, he joined the SS. While Mengele only thought of joining the Nazi Party, Verschuer believed the party was not elite enough for an ambitious scientist. The SS, however, had its own research units, offering Mengele the full power of the state for his experiments. At first, he was not an active officer. He continued his work in Frankfurt, but with the start of the war, everything moved faster. In 1940, he was called to active duty. Within the Russia, the Race and Settlement Main Office, his mission was in the occupied territories of Poland. His task? To evaluate the people racially. He looked at the color of their eyes, the shape of their skulls, and their family trees. He decided who was worthy of being Germanized and who should be deported. His work in Poland was a dress rehearsal for Auschwitz. In June 1941, Mengele began his duty as a field doctor in the 5th SS Panzer Division, also known as the Viking Division. He was sent to the bloodiest front of the war, the border of the Soviet Union. Here Mengele worked under heavy fire, through the mud and the snow. For his bravery in 1941, he was awarded the Iron Cross, 2nd class. A year later, in the Rostov region of Ukraine, he rescued 2 wounded German soldiers from a burning tank. For this, he received the Iron Cross, first class. But in these fierce battles, Mengele was severely wounded. His injuries meant he could no longer fight on the front lines. In late 1942, he was sent back to Berlin. Immediately, he returned to his old mentor, Professor Ottmar von Verschuer. His mentor was now the director of the infamous Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. This was the heart of Nazi science. Verschuer wanted Mengele to go to Auschwitz. Using his influence over the SS leadership, he secured Mengele's appointment to Auschwitz-Birkenau. His goal was simple, yet terrifying. He wanted Mengele to take the theories they studied in the Institute and test them on living human subjects. Mengele began his duty at the camp on May 24, 1943. He arrived with a sharp uniform, his medals from the Eastern Front shining, and a cold sense of confidence. He was 32 years old, holding the rank of SS captain. The primary duty of the doctors was to decide the fate of those arriving in the camp. Thousands, brought by trains from all over Europe, stood before them for a brief inspection. The young and the strong were sent to the right, to work. The children, the elderly, and the sick were sent to the left, toward the gas chambers, under the lie that they were going to take a shower. Most doctors could not perform this selection without being drunk. Dr. Hans Munk described it as psychological torture, using heavy alcohol to survive the horror. But Mengele was different. Even when he was not on duty, he went to meet the trains. As the doors opened, he would shout, "Twins, over here!" He walked between the wagons, dressed perfectly, calmly whistling a tune. With a slight movement of his cane, to the right or to the left, he decided who would live and who would die. The prisoners gave him a name, the Angel of Death. He was supposed to be a doctor who gave life, yet he was also an executioner. Outside the normal hierarchy of the camp, Mengele built his own professional kingdom. He had a private facility filled with autopsy rooms and medical laboratories, equipped with the most modern tools of the time. The twins, the dwarfs, and those with physical anomalies were brought directly to this special place. Compared to others, these prisoners were fed better. Their hair was not shaved, and they were allowed to wear their own clothes. But this was not kindness. It was a strategy to ensure his experimental data remained pure. Mengele was strangely affectionate toward the twin children. He would take them for rides in his car, giving them sweets and chocolates. The children even called him Uncle Mengele. But once he gained their trust, the experiments began. He treated them as nothing more than biological samples. If one twin died, he would immediately kill the other, so he could perform a side-by-side autopsy. To him, they were not children. They were a laboratory result. Mengele's primary obsession was his experiments on twins. Along with his mentor, Verschuer, he planned to unlock the secrets of genetic heritage, to rapidly increase the Aryan population. He also tested if he could change brown eyes into blue. He injected chemicals directly into the eyes of children, trying to force a biological shift. These experiments only led to blindness, agonizing pain, and fatal infections. During his time at Auschwitz, Mengele sent regular reports and biological samples to Professor Verschuer. Organs, and especially eyes, were placed in glass jars filled with chemical solutions like formalin. To prevent them from breaking, these jars were packed in wooden crates filled with sawdust and straw. Each crate was stamped with a specific label, Kriegswichtig, meaning vital for the war effort. This label ensured the packages moved through customs and transport without any delay. At the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, Verschuer received these jars. He studied the eyes and the organs sent from the death camp, carefully writing his scientific reports. The teacher and the student were working together in a factory of death. These research projects were directly supported by the state, receiving massive funding from the Reich Research Council. Both the SS and Himmler provided full financial and political backing to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Their goal was to accelerate the birth of a blonde, blue-eyed, healthy, and intelligent Aryan race. With this immense power behind them, Mengele and Verschuer worked without limits. To create their perfect race, they studied prisoners with physical anomalies in brutal detail. Their aim was to prevent these traits from being passed to the next generation. In these studies, countless lives were lost. To speed up the growth of the master race, twins and triplets were their most valuable subjects. They were searching for the key to multiple births, to populate the future of the Reich. This dark bridge between Mengele and his mentor lasted from the summer of 1943 until late 1944. But then, the tides of war began to turn. On the Eastern Front, the German army was being crushed by the Red Army. The retreat had begun. In the first weeks of 1945, rumors of the approaching Soviet troops began to fill the air. Reports from the front said the Red Army was only 20 to 30 kilometers away. Fearing the consequences, the SS leadership gave orders to empty the camp and burn every trace of their crimes. Most prisoners were forced into the brutal, long marches, known as the Death Marches, moving toward the west. Mengele watched as thousands of pages of his experimental notes and medical records were thrown into the furnaces. But he did not destroy everything. He kept his most important findings and a few key samples hidden away. On the night of January 17th, 1945, just 10 days before the Red Army arrived, Mengele vanished. Under the cover of darkness, he fled the camp in an SS vehicle, leaving behind the mountain of ash and bone he had created. The hunt was about to begin. In the next chapter, we follow the shadow of the Angel of Death as he escapes the ruins of Germany. We will uncover his journey to South America, the hidden networks that protected him, and the mystery of his final disappearance. Stay with us for the escape of Joseph Mengele.